Day to our viewers in Guam and the Northern Marianas. My name is Thomas Mangloña, reporting here on Saipan for KUM News. Today, we're grateful to be joined by Mr. Paul Miura, a teacher at Saipan Southern High School here on Saipan. He also happens to be on the CNMI Public School System Board of Education as the teacher representative. Mr. Miura, thank you for joining us. How are you doing?
Good morning and happy day, Guam and Saipan CNMI viewers. Thank you for having me on this morning.
Great, and so we know it's a busy time for everyone. We want to go ahead and jump right in. We wanted to talk to you for those who might just be tuning in, especially from Guam or the mainland. Are you able to provide information on what the rest of the semester for the public school system in the CNMI looks like in terms of student learning in the island?
Okay, great. So basically, our school year has ended for the majority of our students as of, I think it was March 13th was the last day we met with our students face to face. And following that date, we wrapped up the school year and submitted grades for the majority of the students. Some exceptions are made for graduating seniors who have yet to fulfill their graduation requirements, as well as, I believe, some middle schoolers who were set to be promoted. And I'm not positive about the elementary school, if there are any students who are still receiving graded instruction. So for the majority of the students, teachers were asked to prepare enrichment packets that are voluntary. You know, they're not going to be graded, but basically provided to students both in hard copy form and as well as digital form for those who are able to avail of the digital format. And these enrichment packets vary from teacher to teacher, from class to class, and basically they are meant to, you know, allow students to continue learning and growing, you know, both emotionally and academically during this shortened school year.
Thanks for sharing that. I also know the Grab and Go meal program just recommenced in the past few weeks, and so CNMI children are able to avail of that, fortunately. Now I wanted to shift a little bit. As we mentioned, you are the teacher representative on the CNMI Public School Systems Board of Education. We know that locally funded educators and staff, about roughly 700 of them, were furloughed with what seems to be the next 12 months. The next question I wanted to ask you is that, especially after the furlough, can you provide an update as to how the public school system plans to make that plan happen to pay its teachers as much as possible, and how the recent news of the injunction and the MPLT bridge loan impacts that?
Right. So last week there was an emergency special board meeting that was convened to approve a loan application with MPLT in the amount of $5 million. And that was, the intent was to be able to apply that to operations until the federal assistance arrives, hopefully in the very near future. And so basically, since prior to being furloughed, our teachers and educators, you know, our entire PSS staff incurred payless paydays, and so we haven't been paid for, I think, 1.5 pay periods. So, you know, it started with a partial payout of 70%. The remaining 30% was recently dispersed to teachers, but we still have 2 pay periods, or at least 1 full pay period and a partial pay period that we have yet to secure funding for.
And I wanted to ask you, what are you hearing? What are some of the stories being shared from other public school teachers that you might know?
Yeah, so the obvious, you know, much like the rest of the employees who have been laid off or furloughed, we, you know, teachers and educators across the CNMI are experiencing severe hardships, um, wondering how they will pay their bills, how they will support their families, and it's a very stressful and desperate time for our employees here in the CNMI.
And talking about getting help for these trying times, what type of support that you know of is available or will be available to the public school system that you're aware of from the federal government, maybe from the CARES Act?
Right. So the CARES Act, discussed in our meeting yesterday, was, we were given an update, and the hope is that we will receive the CARES Act funding sometime later this week, either Friday or Saturday. It's not clear, but I believe what was said is that we are expecting a minimum of $12.5 million, which we will then use to cover a lot of our unpaid expenses, including the missed payroll transfers.
We also know that there are some issues from the recent super typhoons. For those who might not be aware, what were some of the students facing even before this pandemic hit?
Right. So the CNMI public school system was faced with tremendous adversity over the past, I guess, 3 or 4 years. Starting with Sodalor, and then moving into Manghut and U2, and so the devastation caused by those super typhoons, left our a lot of our structures in shambles, and as many are aware of, we had to relocate an entire campus to Hoblerville. The Hopwood campus was completely destroyed, and so basically they've been working out of FEMA supplied tents, much like the ones they are erecting for this healthcare crisis. And so it's been over a year now going on. We're almost at the end of, well, we are at the end of this school year. So basically, um, it it's just been an ongoing struggle for those students and educators at those schools. In addition, many of the schools suffered damage as well, and were placed on half day schedules to accommodate all the students um, in the classrooms that were still safe and usable. And so, a lot of progress has been made with those schools. However, we are now faced with a much more what appears to be a long lasting crisis that we're facing right now. And so it's not clear as to what the opening of the schools will look like next year. So there are several scenarios being discussed and vetted by our leadership, who have been working around the clock, trying to prepare for the opening of the school year. And so everything's on the table right now. I believe half day schedules, reduced hours, um, and even the distance learning component. I'm aware of an effort to have this um, technology component implemented. They are exploring remote um, internet sites or accessibility through our buses. Having stations set up within our villages, and so that's currently ongoing. And so but it's still very unclear as to what direction we will be heading in.
I know a lot of people are already asking about the next school year. With a lot of uncertainty, people are looking ahead. Can you share what you know about maybe plans for graduation and possibly even plans for the next school year? Is that already something that's being discussed in the circle?
Yes, so the individual schools are working on plans for our graduating seniors, and so there are committees that have been set up within the schools, and they are exploring the many options that could be feasible, and we want to be able to provide, the best experience possible under the circumstances for our graduating seniors. So we're hoping that by the time graduation rolls around, that we will have come up with some really creative and um, innovative um, graduation ideas for our seniors.
Yeah, I think I saw one of the headlines recently that they're even exploring a drive-through graduation, which I think would be interesting to see. But what about plans for the next school year? What's the discussion on that so far?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, so there are so many concerns facing the public school system, not just here in the CNMI. I'm sure it's nationwide, in regards to the reduced funding that is likely to occur for the public school systems. The local funds, and so it's uncertain because right now we've been given a projected budget of $18 million to operate our schools for the next fiscal year, which it nearly impossible to do, and so obviously we would hope that um, our federal government will provide some assistance to help alleviate some of the operations expenses at the school levels. But without having any of that concrete information available, I mean, we have to plan for the worst case scenarios, which would include, consolidation of schools, reduction in force, um, shorten school weeks, as I mentioned, the half day schedules and so forth. So everything and anything and everything is being considered at this point.
Yeah, and I think right now we know there are no positive confirmed cases on Rhoda and Tinian, but when we talk about the CNMI public school system, that's also impacting students on Rhoda and Tinian, right?
That's correct. So all of these plans that I mentioned, would apply to our Tinian and Rhoda schools as well. They have a slightly different configuration of their school system already, and so it's not clear. None of this has been vetted through committee at the board level, and so we were expecting to receive some updates. And I know that our leadership team at central office are working around the clock to provide that to the board, and so that we can then start the vetting process.
All right, and just to wrap up our conversation, I wanted to ask you what your message is to the students, but also to the teachers at home who might be watching this. They're watching this unfold. This impacts them as they face their own challenges at home. What's your message to students, and what's your message to your colleagues right now?
So to our students, I just want all of our students to know that we believe in them. We will not abandon you, and we are here for you, to help support you in any way we can. And to my colleagues, to the educators, not just here in the CNMI but also in Guam, I ask that you continue to provide the necessary support to your students, because they desperately need it during this time of crisis. And I'm confident that that every educator out there will continue to do so. Um, and if I could also, I'd like to also give a shout out to all of the frontliners, whether it be, the task forces in Guam, in the CNMI, healthcare professionals, public safety officers, um, store clerks who are providing, staying open so we can get our supplies that we need. And I really appreciate everything that you guys are doing for us. And I hope that this will all end sooner than later. And one last thing I forgot to mention during our discussion on the federal funding. I just wanted to thank our congressman, Kilili Sablan, and the Guam congressman, I believe it's San Nicolas, for all of your efforts in securing the necessary federal relief for our islands. We so desperately need it. So thank you so much.
All right, thank you so much to Mr. Paul Miura, teacher at Saipan Southern High School, also on the Board of Education as the teacher representative in the CNMI public school system. We're thankful for your time and for your words and the updates. And we thank you, our viewers in the Northern Marianas and Guam, for joining us. Reporting from Saipan, I'm Thomas Mangloña. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Tomas.